Hello. I think we're live now. I'm just trying to get the my presentation up on the screen. Um, can someone just do? Perfect. Hi everyone. Um, my name's Hannah. I'm an occupational therapist, and this is my presentation today on doing what we love and well-being. So that's my first time doing something that's live streamed. So that's quite exciting. Um, yep, this is me. I'm an occupational therapist. This short presentation is just going to have me explaining what is OT, occupational therapy, what do we do, and how does that help your well-being. Um, there is a comment section. So hello, Irene. It's nice to see that there's people here because I can't see any faces or anything. So please just say hello in the comments. Please ask questions. I do want this to be as interactive as possible via a live stream. Actually, before I start, are there any occupational therapists watching? I'm just looking at the comments. Hi, Victoria. Is there anyone watching who has had occupational therapy themselves, or knows someone who's had occupational therapy, or has a friend who's an occupational therapist? Is there anyone? In a way, it makes my life a bit easier if there's no OTs in the room, because then I can just talk about what OT is. No? Okay. All right, so I'm just going to tell you a bit about myself, which I think is really important. So I'm Hannah, I'm an occupational therapist. I work on a mental health ward, and some of the things I love are British Sign Language, illustration, art. You can also see I love my cat, and I love music. One of my favourite bands is the Manic Street Preachers. So Catherine knows occupational therapists. Great. Okay. And I'm just telling you a bit about myself because these are all things that I do. So I've learnt British Sign Language. I enjoy going to concerts. I love drawing and I love looking after a pet and the interaction with an animal that you get. And all of those contribute to well-being. Um, so during this presentation, I've got lots of pictures and memes. It's very visual because I'm dyslexic and I'm a very visual person. So that's why I've got this in here. So Never Ending Story when I was a child was the Never Ending Story. And Never Ending Story as an OT is what is an occupational therapist? Loads of people do not know. So what is an OT? So an occupational therapist helps you to basically live your best life, whether that be at school, work, leisure, family time, basically anywhere. It's about doing the things you want to do and that you have to do. Um, and this might be so we might be helping someone to overcome challenges like learning at school or playing a sport or drawing or doing more mundane tasks that you have to do, such as like the dishes or showering. These are all known as occupations. So that's what the occupational bit means in occupational therapy. Lots of people think it's just to do with work, but it's not. It's just anything you do in your life. Um, Everything is focused on your well-being and the ability to participate in what's meaningful to you. So that's also important, the part that's meaningful. It's a science, so we study a science-based and health and social care degree. So we are a profession. So we train with physiotherapists and speech and language therapists as well. So most people have heard of physiotherapists and speech and language therapists, but a lot of people haven't heard of OTs and don't understand what we do, yet we all train together. And you will find us in similar places to physios, speech and language therapists, nurses, etc. So we are an individual profession. We are not occupational health. Lots of people think that we are the same thing. Occupational health is a department. Occupational therapist is a profession. So an occupational health unit could have nurses, doctors, could have an OT, could have a physio, but occupational therapy is a profession. So one way to think about OT is to think about your own life. What did you do? What have you all done today? Today I got up, I got out of bed, I fed my cat, I had breakfast, I walked to the station, I got on a train, I went to work, I've done all the things I've done at work. These are all things that you have to do every day. Now, what would I do if I was really depressed or anxious or had a physical illness or was starting to age or had an injury? How would I do all of these things? Um, and that's where an occupational therapist helps with um, that side of things. So I work in mental health, so I can help with physical health problems as well as the mental health side of things. Hello from a fellow OT. It's nice to hear benefits of profession being promoted. Hi, Lucy. It is nice to have another OT here. Um, so all of that information I've just talked about is from Royal College of Occupational Therapists, which is our professional body. And you can find out way more information there. They're really helpful. I am a member, um, and they've also got information on how to find an OT or how to train to become one, or just general information about what they might do in each area, each clinical area, because you'll find us in like a stroke ward, you'll find us in a mental health ward, you'll find us in community mental health team, you'll find us in older age care, you'll find us in schools and social services, basically everywhere. So this is what occupational therapy is. Science and occupations merged together becomes occupational therapy. The person who made this meme says it's the best profession ever. But they are an occupational therapist. I didn't make this, someone else did. So this is, so I also do illustrations. So this is an illustration I made. Just talking about what the word occupation means. So it's a myth that occupation only means work or jobs. So if you take anything away, take away that. Occupation refers, so this is a direct quote from Royal College of Occupational Therapists. Occupation as a term refers to practical and purposeful activities that allow people to live independently and have a sense of identity. This could be essential day to day tasks such as self care, work, leisure, etc. And then I've written about think about your day to day, what you do. So we are a profession that helps with what you do. And it's worth thinking that there are three groups of occupation. There's leisure, productivity, and self-care. So leisure being could be, I've put some examples: drawing, sports, listening to music. Productivity could be work, could be study. Self-care could be washing, sleeping, using the toilet, etc. I don't know if anyone's got any questions about that. If you do, just pop it in the chat. I'm keeping my eye on that as well. I think it's also important to mention sleep as an occupation. It is something we do, and I think there will definitely be people watching who've had a sleep problem at some point. Um, I really like this quote: "Doctors add days to life, but occupational therapists add life to days." I think that's quite. I mean, I love that quote. It's quite profound, really. Doctors do extend your life, but we make the days meaningful, or at least try to. Occupational therapists ask what matters to you, not what's the matter with you. So that's how we work. Um, so what matters to you? I don't know if this is covering up. So I've some of the presentations covered up by the RVS logo, but this should say what matters to you. So does anyone want to share anything about what matters to them? Like what if has anyone got a hobby, interesting hobby, or play a sport? Is anyone a parent? Does anyone have a musician or band they really love? Does anyone belong to a faith group? Does anyone have an interesting or rare skill? Please put in the chat if there's anyone watching who family. Yep. So family is important to Catherine. I love to run, Victoria. Yeah. So perhaps these things to some people, so for example, I don't like running. If I was to say become really depressed and an OT worked with me and they said you've got to run, that's not meaningful to me, but it might be to somebody else. Photography. Yeah, see, I love photography, and that if I was really struggling, that actually might be something that really helps me. And you'll find everyone has something that they love. Arts and craft. Yeah, I love arts and crafts as well. Thank you. Well, the logo has just disappeared, so I can see the presentation. Thank you, whoever did that. Reiki, sacred drumming, sound baths, etc. Do you know what? It's the first time I've heard recently, about 2 weeks ago, was the first time I'd ever heard of sound baths. I'd never heard of it before, but it's very interesting. Drumming has a lot of, as well as being part of a group, keeping rhythm, there's more evidence growing that it's very calming as well and regulates you. Ability to ability to be able to access holistic advice so that I can know how to manage yeah. Sorry, it took me a while to read that, Catherine, but yeah. Walking and playing with my dogs. Yeah. Beatles, Duran Duran fan here. This, I love the Manic Street Preachers too. Woo, another fan. There's a lady on here who does in classes, does sound baths with yoga. Interesting. Okay. So I think we can identify that pretty much everyone watching has something that matters to them. And I'll talk a bit about why that's important. So, occupational therapy is holistic. So, we take a whole person approach with both physical health and mental well-being, so that people can achieve their full potential. So, we are different to say nurses. They train in like mental health or learning disability or general or peds, etc. But we just train as an OT, so we actually get placements and learning from all different areas, and then we specialize. But actually, here I will be thinking about the person as a whole. So I will be supporting their physical health, their mental health, their cognition, if they've got a learning disability or if they're neurodivergent in some way. So, yeah, so we are a bit different. And often, the way we work with people is we work with strengths as well as their challenges. So, if someone's really good at something, that might help them overcome a challenge that they have, depending on what the problem someone's facing. So this is a comic I made. This is a little bit passive aggressive, I think, because this is me seeing things in the media all the time. Doctors saying um, that a certain activity is great for mental health, and that really annoys me. So I don't know if there's anyone here who's ever been depressed and gone to their GP and they've said, "Oh, go and do mindfulness," but actually they haven't told you how, where, assumed you've got money to pay for it, assumed you can physically get there, etc. Maybe you don't like mindfulness. Maybe you're not at a stage where you can sit with yourself, for example. Those are the kinds of things that really, really annoy me. Partly because it's happened to me as well, but this is where OT comes in because we look at what is meaningful for someone. So here is one thing. So I actually saw about 4 years ago at some point, there was a BBC article that said um, knitting helps with mental health. So I've put on here, I know it might be quite small for you to see, but it does say knitting cures mental health problems. And then a little cat saying, this cat is an occupational therapist. So the next one is, sorry, this is very, very small and I'm struggling to read it. Um, Knitting is a fantastic activity and it's great for your mental health, but only if knitting is meaningful and you are able to do it, have a way of learning, have enough money, have enough time, have a home, etc. So myself, I've tried knitting. and I'm rubbish at it, and I actually find it quite frustrating. So if I read that article and thought knitting's good for mental health, it's a bit misleading because it's not good for my mental health. It might be good for some of the people watching who are really good at knitting or just enjoy making something for someone or just sitting in front of the tea knitting, who like to keep their hands busy. Yes, that's good for them. So what I fear will happen is, so this is a doctor and a patient conversation. So how can I help? I'm depressed. I prescribe knitting, but I hate craft and I'm homeless and I'm so sad. Well, this study says it helps. And then the cat saying sigh. So this is where OTs can really help. Um, I'm not sure what help is in this video. Sorry, I've just come on here. Sally, I'm talking about occupational therapy. So I'm talking a bit about what we are as a profession, and then a bit about how we can help our well-being. Um, so actually, instead of a doctor perhaps just saying that knitting is like a panacea or baking is a panacea or visiting an art gallery was the most recent one that I saw, um, most activities which you enjoy are good for your mental health. So what about mental health? So what we do can bring a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. What we do also ties us to our culture, our history, roots, and faith. So maybe some of you can think about what some of the things you do. Perhaps you maybe have a faith where you go to somewhere to pray and you have a community. That's something you do that ties you to perhaps history, celebrations, family, culture, your own family history, etc. Um, for me, I love the Manic Street Preachers, which ties me to quite a big fan base of friends that I've made. Um, and yeah, so it can bring us community, friendships, relationships, family, etc. And some things we do satisfy roles such as a parent or friend. So that's something we might be supporting someone with. Um, when they come into a ward, for example, that they are a parent or a friend, but they haven't engaged in any of those activities that might bring them back to those relationships. So we're not just saying, let's do this one activity. We're thinking more around the whole occupation and how it can support what that person needs, whether they need to rebuild friendships or do something with their partner or whatever. Um, Learning something new is also good for our well-being. So for me, learning British Sign Language has been really good for my well-being. Um, it can distract us from our thoughts if we're really struggling with our mental health. Actually, doing an activity, if we're able, I have to say, not everyone is able to. Um, what we do can express our identity, our faith, our nationality. If we're part of the LGBTQAI plus community, um, you might think, well, what do you mean by that? So if you're part of the LGBT community, you might be going to gay clubs, or you might be going to, I don't know, some kind of queer protest or gathering together, or your friends all might be queer, etc. And I use the word queer because that's how I identify. Um, and sometimes so on the flip side, so those are all the positive things it can bring us, but sometimes on the flip side is sometimes what we can do causes us distress as well. So there is an OT at Brighton University. Name's just completely gone from my brain. But she wrote a book about the dark side of occupation. So people who engage in things that perhaps aren't good for their well-being. One example might be trolling people on the internet, through to more extreme things such as committing crimes. Um, so OTs are now starting to look at that as well, how we can support people when they're perhaps doing things they don't really want to be doing. And I think we have a role in supporting people who self-harm as well, because that is something people are doing. So I'm just going to look at the comments. I've got chronic depression and struggle to manage mine. I've never had an OT to help me. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of people in mental health who don't get access to an OT. Sometimes you might not know it's an OT as well, especially if they're working in a community mental health team. They work often as a what's called a care coordinator. So you might not know that they're an OT, but you probably, if you haven't had an OT, you probably haven't had an OT. There's usually only one in each team, and we're often quite stretched as to who we can support. I started learning Italian on an app, which gave me a sense of achievement, but 2 months on, it's a struggle, and I'm not able to remember what I'm learning. Yeah, that's really tough. But it's really good that you started learning because I can't imagine trying to learn a language from an app. But at least you're starting. Um, you might be thinking, how can what can you go further with that? I imagine it must be hard to learn a language from an app. I've learned languages through being with people, like so for British Sign Language, for example. Right, I'm going to go on to the next slide. So, what might be stopping you? So actually, Sally, that does tie into what we're talking about. What might be stopping you doing what you want to do? So, I've written down a brief list. So, motivation. When I say motivation, lots of people read that as me thinking that people are lazy. I don't think that at all. I think motivation is very complex. And you can be very tired, especially if you're disabled, you have chronic illnesses, etc. Also, you could believe that you're not good enough or you can't achieve things. I've worked with people who've said, "Oh, I'm just rubbish at that," when actually I know that they're actually really good at it. For example, so that might be an area that we work with someone is improving their kind of self worth. Um, and then skills. So some people might not be able to do something because they don't know how. So they might need teaching. For example, someone might not be cooking, but that's because they don't know how to cook. No one's ever taught them and they have never been able to learn. Um, Routine might be stopping you if you're not sleeping, for example, or your day is really full from work. That might also be stopping you from doing what you need to do. Um, Also, if you're really depressed, for example, and um, your sleep routine maybe is switched and you're up at night, but you're asleep during the day, that might be impacting. Or if you're not having like regular meals and you're hungry all the time or not hungry. Um, Environment as well. I think we underestimate the environment. Um, there's without secure housing, most people will struggle to do anything that they love. I think this is one role for an OT is supporting someone to get into safe housing, and also being very aware whether someone feels safe in their home as well. So we're thinking of domestic violence, etc. For example, it's very hard if you think of a doctor saying go and do knitting, and that person is not safe at home. How would they ever do that? Or if they're homeless, um, or if they're living with housemates that are bullying them, for example, and they're having to be on high alert all the time. Environment also includes like the social environment as well. So whether you've got friends and family around you or people who identify with who you are. So perhaps if you are an LGBTQIAI person, are you in the community? Are you making friends with people? Um, or for example, if you are part of the deaf community, then are you with them or are you in the hearing community? That both present challenges. And then obviously the last one is money. Quite a lot of what we need to do costs money. And we can't hide from that fact that poverty does mean that people cannot engage in activities. I've just seen Virtual Village Hall offering support. That's really good. Has anyone got anything that they want to add to that? Has anyone ever thought about that before? So this is like the key skill of an OT. We assess people and we try to figure out why they're not able to do what they want to do. And we look at these kinds of areas and then we try to support. Okay, I'll go on to the next one. So, what I'm quite well known for is making this book, which is called Boring Self Care, which I self published. And it was a project about self care where I was claiming back the meaning of self care. So, online, I saw self care being talked about as only nice things like, oh, bubble bath, crystals, etc. Buying nice things for yourself, often spending money, when actually, when you're really depressed or you're really anxious or any other kind of mental health problem, actually, sometimes self-care is just getting the dishes done. Sometimes it's cleaning the toilet. Sometimes it's having a shower. And those things are achievements in itself. So this project, I drew each of those kind of occupations or self-care, boring self-care, and I posted them online, and lots of people found them quite helpful. And then I created this book, which I published myself, which unfortunately you can't buy at the moment. You will be able to in the future, but I have just moved house, so I haven't got my shop up and running because I was posting them and out and dealing with it all myself. Um, so yeah, so this is these are all my social media details if anyone's interested in following me. Does anyone have any questions? There's quite a lot of information in one go. Time can be an issue. You may have family, other commitments, need to think of doing other activities where life it would fit in. Yeah. So Catherine's just saying about how sometimes we're so busy that we don't have enough time to do things that we love. But actually, sometimes we can be doing too much as well. And then also because we live in a system of capitalism, sometimes we have to go to work, we have to be making money. Um, and childcare is expensive. Um, but there might be ways sometimes uh, to fit in other things or to fit in rest. Rest is also something that we do. Catherine, how do you need a refer? Do you need a referral to see an OT? So that's a good question. It really depends what area. So if it's mental health, the usual way of seeing one is through a CMHT, community mental health team, or if you're on a mental health ward, which is not that accessible for people if they don't reach the threshold of CMHT. They can obviously you can find one privately if you go on the Royal College of Occupational Therapy website, or if you just Google private occupational therapists, you can find someone there. But obviously, that means paying, which I know is not accessible to everybody. Procrastinating is my barrier. Yeah, so I'm just reading. Sorry, I'm just reading the comment. It takes me a while to read. Oh, I'm really sorry, Sally. I mean, it's quite a common experience. I think what you're saying around just general lack of support and procrastinating. I mean, I procrastinate as well. Sometimes if you're just struggling on a day, it's hard to just get started and initiate. And maybe that's probably where you need some help. Um, if you're under a CMHT, you can always ask for OT. Um, and you could say that's you want the help around procrastinating and getting started. uh, they may say they may say no. I don't know. CMHTs really vary. Catherine, my mum has arthritis and was referred by her medical team. I wonder where she must have been referred to. Was it maybe a physical health team? So something else we also do is provide equipment. So if someone's struggling to do things like get on and off the toilet or get in the bath or sit in the kitchen, etc., we can prescribe specialist equipment or do adaptations to houses so that people are able to do what they need to do. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Virtual Village Hall. It's been really nice to have this chat, to have a bit of interaction. Thank you, everyone who shared their experiences. I really appreciate the interaction. Um, yeah, that's so. Catherine's saying, could possibly ask if they have a link worker or GP can ask for an OT referral for your support. Yeah, it is worth asking GP if there is OT support because it's just so different all around the country. Okay, so you've had support with mobility stuff, but not the mental health side OT. It is a shame that we are kind of all split up into physical, mental health, etc. And thank you, Sally, for saying that. Sally Shanley. But yeah, thank you everyone so much for listening and joining. I really, really, really appreciate it. And it's just really nice to talk with some people, even if I can't see your faces, but I'm just imagining anyway from your tiny little Facebook photo. If that's it, and has anyone got any other questions, then I will go. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Catherine. Lisa says my GP surgery has said mental health has been taken out of surgery. It just varies so much around the country. Okay, well, I think it's time for me to go. If you want to keep in contact, you can obviously follow my Instagram, etc. I did have the presentation up. Hopefully, you got my various details. Thanks, Catherine. Okay, all right. I'm going to go. Follow me over on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active. Bye. Hope you all have a good evening.